In a time of heightened sensitivity in cancel culture, people often call to boycott certain projects without fully considering the ramifications of their actions. Boycotting has been around for centuries, proving time and time again to be an effective yet peaceful way to call attention to problematic or unjust situations.
I hope what it does is show Netflix that just because they put it out there doesn't mean it's okay.
The aim is to inflict economic loss to an individual, corporation, or in this case, a film, in order to urge a change in behavior. For the most part, boycotting has been used for the better. Pulling support from people or companies who are harming a community is a great idea. However, in some cases, especially in the film industry, it's important to think through the entire impact of a boycott before making a decision. In 2019, Disney released a live-action remake of Mulan in theaters as well as on Disney+.
It is my duty to protect my family.
Months before the release, Liu Yifei, the titular lead actress, tweeted her support for the Hong Kong police during human rights protests that resulted in tear gas, rubber bullets, and pepper spray being utilized against protesters.
Liu's statement sparked instant outcry in Hong Kong, where the local police have been accused by international human rights groups of excessive use of force in confrontations with protesters and the public.
Fans were outraged and called for Yifei to be recast, though she had been involved in the film for years already at this point and ultimately was not replaced. When the film was released, a movement of #BoycottMulan gained traction on social media as Disney fans did not want to support an actress who held views supporting the Hong Kong police and Chinese government.
Backlash has been just as swift, though. The #BoycottMulan has taken over Twitter and Instagram in the time since Liu's post. One user on Twitter wrote, "Support Liu's Mulan equals support police's abuse of power. The spirit of Mulan is about bravery, not fighting the citizens with unlimited force."
A similar situation occurred regarding the remake of West Side Story in 2021, with the lead actor being the reason for controversy. The film stars Ansel Elgort as Tony, the Romeo figure and leading man. In June of 2020, allegations of sexual assault from Elgort were brought to the public eye. Understandably, social media users called for a boycott of West Side Story, as they did not want to support a man who may be an assaulter. Again, people wanted the role to be recast, but filming had already taken place the year prior. Once the film was released, box office sales were not nearly as high as director Steven Spielberg's previous projects. Many speculate that the low sales were due to Elgort's involvement.
But guys, Maria and Tony were just really, really bad. So unfortunately, I cannot give this one too high a score.
In the cases of Mulan and West Side Story, it's vital to consider the impact that letting these films fail would have on the industry. Both films feature casts that represents the culture that the stories are about. Mulan is based on a Chinese legend and takes place in China during the Han Dynasty. While the voice cast for the original 1998 film did feature Chinese actors, it was not as diverse as it could have been. The live-action remake, however, featured a cast that was entirely representative of the place and the culture the film was set in, demonstrating immense growth from the original film. This issue is even more prominent in the remake of West Side Story. The original 1961 film is iconic, both in the film world and the theater world. It received immense praise from critics and became a cultural touchstone. But the film was inherently racist due to its casting. A significant number of the Puerto Rican characters in the film were played by white actors in makeup to make their skin appear darker. The film's role as an iconic piece of media means that these racist castings were continued to be viewed and praised. In the remake, over 20 of the 33 Puerto Rican characters were played by Puerto Rican actors, with the remaining characters being played by actors with backgrounds in other Latin countries. By allowing films with inclusive, diverse, and accurately representative cast to become box office failures, the message being sent to Hollywood is not necessarily connected to the issue that was being boycotted in the first place. The relative failure of West Side Story does not only mean that people do not want to see films with Ansel Elgort, it could also mean that people do not prioritize watching inclusive films. The failure of Mulan could mean that people do not want to support Ife, and it could mean that people do not want to see live-action remakes. However, it could also mean that people do not want to support the all-Chinese cast. When deciding to boycott a film, it's important to consider all the messages you could be sending. Often, it is more important to give support to minority groups and social progress that may be in the film, rather than taking away support due to one actor's role. Further than the Latin representation, the West Side Story remake featured a transgender character that was not present in the original production. This is yet another matter that was inadvertently boycotted along with the film. Instead of jumping onto a boycotting bandwagon, you should think critically about the situation and make an educated decision on whether or not the positive messages outweigh the negatives. Of course, Mulan and West Side Story are not the only films to be boycotted. Many films are boycotted due to whitewashed casting, or racism, misogyny, or sexual misconduct within the film's production.
Marshall thought he was God's gift to women, but he's about to discover what women think.
These are larger matters that are not only related to one actor in an otherwise progressive piece of media. Many films that are boycotted do not carry the significance and reform that Mulan and West Side Story do. And in these cases, people are welcome to draw whichever conclusion they are comfortable with. Each situation is unique. Any large protest, boycott, or movement is bound to gain media attention. Every media outlet and every person consuming the media are going to draw their own conclusions on the situation. It's vital to consider the variety of messages that can be taken from your stance before your opinions and actions enter the public eye. In the end, it becomes a matter of prioritization and deciding which negatives outweigh which positives, and considering how your actions can impact the future of the industry.